I must admit it's a little embarrassing to hear that kind of stuff about oneself. Can I have the presentation on? Yeah. This works? Perfect. Okay, so, one of the advantages of being a keynote speaker is that you don't actually get a brief. So you can pretty much decide what you want to talk about, right? And hence, none of the participants also expect to hear from the keynote speaker because they're not really sure of what he would be talking about. Yesterday I was thinking about when my team was checking with me on should we make a few slides for the talk tomorrow. I looked through the set of speakers and the sessions that have been planned for today, and I realized that there's a lot of interesting dope coming your way in terms of what technology is working, what does the future look like, etc., etc. So I said, I've crossed 40. I'm on the wrong side of 40 now, and I realized that probably now I have enough experience to start to talk about my past as a means of adding some interesting angle to how you spend the day to day. Yeah, so my attempt now would be on my last 20 years that I've seen in the industry, and what are some of the things I realized I couldn't do well enough of, and give you some cues of what you hence could do differently as you approach the day to day. Yeah, everyone knows about Mr. Graham Bell, of course. How many of you know that he also invented graphophone and invented, the whole the anti-mining signaling machines, etc., etc. He did a lot of that, but he of course got the most PR for telephone. Yeah, and it's probably this is the right time to pay ode to him because this is where the movement actually started. Now this is something very interesting. Take a moment and just look at this slide. What you see on the top right, yeah, some of the best known brains in the world, the McKinsey consultants. I'm sure all of us have seen the best and the brightest, at least so far, probably not anymore. Go to McKinsey and be a part of them. These are supposed to be the best guys at predicting the future. Yeah, and sometime in 1985, AT&T hired these experts and asked them to project, how many mobile phone users would there be in the year 2000. So in 1985, AT&T got them to work on a project to predict the number of mobile users in 2000, in 15 years from then on. What do you think was their projection? These are the guys who really are at the cutting edge of projections. They said there would be around 9 lakh users by 2000. And you know how off they were? They were off by some 120 times. Because they projected that there would be some 9 lakh mobile phone users, and there ended up being some 109 million. Yeah, so almost 11 odd crore users of smartphones. So that was so off that they were in terms of predicting the future. A couple of other very interesting, and these are, I'm only talking about the experts, people who really are supposed to understand and imagine the future well. I'm sure all of you have heard of Digital Equipment Corporation. This is a pretty old name, and they've been the messiahs of communication industry. They got it so wrong. They said there's no reason for any individual to have a computer at home. Yeah, and just imagine the world which was going with the experts, picked it up as a cue and said, okay, fine. So this is not something that is worthy of our attention. The bottom one is very interesting. Western Union, all of us know them for their money transfer, right? Western Union money transfer. How many of you have heard of Western Union money transfer? Yeah, so that I don't feel like being a relic of the past. Yeah, so it's a pretty well-known name. And they were again the big daddies of communication world. When they looked at the telephone, they said this equipment has too many shortcomings and it's not worthy of our attention. Yeah. So what I'm trying to tell you here is experts within the communication industry over the last 100 years have got it hugely, significantly, they were significantly off the mark in projecting the future. This is the point that I wanted to make. If there is one message I want to leave you with today, is that human mind just cannot imagine what the future would look like in case of exponential growth, that gets done across the sectors, and in communication especially, the human mind just cannot imagine. Yeah, and I'll show you some examples, my personal examples as well. But when you look at this curve, the top left one, yeah, the shaded line that you see, is what a human mind looking at the last 3-4 years of your own experience. There is of course that recency effect as well when you imagine the future. So looking at the last 3-4 years, you end up projecting. The shaded line is what you project, yeah, and the hard line is what ends up happening. Every time there is an exponential growth that happens across sectors, across industries. And communication being a kind of field that it is, will always have these kind of disruptive movements, yeah. Of course, our very own Bill Gates, he also very clearly establishes and says that next 2-3 years, probably you project it right or over project, but next 10 years, you get it really off, yeah. And now this is me, yeah. 20 years back, I started sometime 2002, 2003, don't want to give out the exact year, it was 2003, just passed out of college. And what you see here is no smartphones, no data on phones. How do I get the pointer? Yeah, no smartphones, no data on phones, no YouTube on mobile, no social networking. If someone at that point in time would have come to me and shown me this is the status for 2012, 2013. If someone at this point in time would have shown me this chart, I would have ridiculed that person. I would have said, you're out of your mind. In such a short span of time, 10 years, how can the world change so significantly? It's just unbelievable. Won't happen. You're smoking something. Yeah. And look at what happened. From almost nothing, we had 27 million smartphone users, 60 MB of monthly data usage, 4 billion YouTube views, which at that point in time was considered like a wow, 60 million social networking users. Yeah. Again, this is when the real pundits sat together and said, okay, fine. So what do we project for the future? I'm talking about 2012, 2013. And most of the predictions were around saying, it would end up being 5 to 10 times of this in the next 10 years. The most glorious of projections were 10 times. The most, people who were considered people who had their, don't not have their head in the clouds, but feet on the ground, actually ended up saying 5 times. Yeah, look at what happened last year. This is the now, 2023, the age that you belong to. Yeah, 27 million smartphone users have moved to 750 million, 75 crore, people in India. 60 MB monthly data usage, 25 GB is the monthly usage now. 4 billion YouTube views to 503 billion YouTube views. 60 million social networking users to 470 million social networking users. This is the pace of change that has happened in the last 10 years. Yeah. And how many of you were not working in 2012? How many of you started your careers post 2012? The youngest of the lot. Super. Almost 50% of you started post 2012. And how many of you were working in 2002, 2003? Just 3-4 of us in the room. So this message is for people who started working just 10 years back. Guys, I can tell you, 10 years from now, when you try to draw this chart in 2033, it would look like a very different set of parameters. Maybe, I don't know, smartphones might not exist at all. It might be a dumb device and the entire smartness might have moved to the cloud, right? It might be a simple dumb device which pretty much, a piece of metal which does everything. Or maybe there won't be any smartphones at all to work with. There might be simple wearables which pretty much do everything that you want them to do. Sometime in 2010, I met the founder of InMobi. I remember I was in Unilever then, they made a nice pitch on, how mobile will become the device that everyone carries around, uses it for their entire personal work, pretty much is the go-to thing in their life. And we laughed at them. I think, what are these guys thinking? Because it was, at that point in time, it was being used for simple calls and messages, that's it. He said, there are such large screens at home, television screens at home, laptops, desktops. Why would someone want to, keep peeking into, and you see 30% of us are right now peeking into these small screens, trying to figure out their lives. No one could have predicted that just 10 years back. So the point is, what you would expect, what you should expect 10 years from now, you just cannot imagine. So then your question would be, so what do we do? So what you need to do is pay attention. Don't use your logical mind to write off any spark that you see around. Yeah, AI, people are actually writing off the logical use cases of AI, and there is a negative tonality to the whole conversation. There are many use cases of generative AI which are coming up every day. Do immerse yourself into each of those, whichever are working fine, because they might be the biggest thing of the future, and you might be left behind. Yeah. Coming back to mobile, if you're trying to build a large brand, you cannot make it without digital. Do you agree? If you are working on a media budget of 20 crores, 30 crores, you cannot have a media budget without having an adequate digital leg to it. Otherwise, you're really disconnected with your consumers. If you're trying to build a small brand, the best way to start is digital. So digital definitely has become mainstream. All of us agree to that. 70% of digital consumption, 75% of digital consumption actually happens through mobile phones. So pretty much mobile phone is the front, right, and center of communication thesis today. Yeah. But you still see probably mobile marketing not getting the right importance in the organizations, including mine. I have some members of my team sitting here smiling back at me. But yes, we also come from our habits of the past. But this definitely needs to be something that we should take note of, on the importance that mobile marketing needs to have today, because all of us today are connected to mobile. All of us right now in the world of mobile, as we even sit here. The factors that will propel mobile phone usage are all perfectly aligned as well. Disposable income. I'm not sure how many of you have read this statistic that the quantum of middle class that India has added in the last 30 years, the quantum of middle class that India has added in the last 30 years will get added in the next 10 years. Yeah, digest this fact. Now, when that happens, and this is the class that really drives disposable income for the country, imagine just the sheer number of hungry mouths to feed. Yeah, and the quantum of consumption that one is slated to expect. And this is what will drive disposable income. Disposable income is a perfect thesis for this element of marketing to go up, which is mobile marketing. Last but not the least is customization. Again, very, very unique thing, right? So, like it or not, for those of us in the marketing world who really understand marketing, really know who you are, where you are, what you do, what do you use, what do you consume, how do you consume, what time of the day do you consume what, right? So this is what is getting used to send the relevant messages to you. So this is the best example of mass customization at scale. Yeah, this term came in some 6-7 years back. And I can also tell you, pundits at that point in time had written it off, saying mass customization is not happening. Eventually, if manufacturers have to make money, they need to make things at scale. But this mobile phone has actually translated to a perfect mass customization where you actually have cohorts of consumers. You might have 1 lakh consumers spread out across the country, maybe 100 in every state, which form a perfect cohort for a brand to speak to. And for those consumers, that's a very relevant brand. And this is a perfect example of relevant consumer and relevant message from the brand coming together in terms of mass customization. So this thesis will only go up. There is no reason for this to go down going forward. And mobile provides a perfect medium to drive this mass customization as well. Yeah. Some examples of stuff that we have done, and I'm not touching too much on the future. I just wanted to project the past to help you imagine the future better. But yeah, lots of things around mass customization, for example, are, Nazeline. I don't know how many of you have, so we'll actually first showcase, this is who we are. This is Cipla Health. In the last 6-7 years of its existence, we now have some 18 odd brands. Pretty much the entire wellness ecosystem has been tapped as a part of this setup. For those of you who smoke, of course, you will swear by Nicotex. For those of you who have regular bouts of cough, will relate to Coughsil, the largest pain care brand, Omnigel, etc., etc. Now, so we have very large brands, very small brands, completely new age D2C brands in our ecosystem, and we do tap mobile as one of the key theses. When we tap into this ecosystem, Nazeline is a great example. The tagline simply is, ये बंद ना खोले ताकि आप खुल के सो लें. Yeah, so it allows you to have a good night's sleep. And Prajapati is one of the characters for this brand. So the mass customization gets done wherein you actually talk to one cohort of North, say in Delhi, and tell them it's 15 degrees centigrade, will you be able to sleep well tonight? Use Naseline. Yeah, it's so relevant for that audience at that point in time, and you can't imagine any other medium allowing you to achieve that kind of a specificity around the brand. Yeah. My favorite, we heard the earlier speaker talk about immersive AI. Now, again, something like what Lenskart has done for those of you who wear specs. I also need one now. If you have interacted with Lenskart, you would know about this experience, right, of immersive AI, where you can actually try out the right shade and the right specs and size, etc., that works best on your face. This was done in 2021 for the first time in India. Today it looks like such an obvious thing to do. I'm sure many of you have heard of this example of Garnier, where you can actually figure out the look on your hair to decide the right color combination that works for you, which then allows you to buy the right product. Now imagine mobile allows you to do that. If you take mobile out of the equation, do you really think consumers will end up leveraging something like this? And imagine the kind of conversation that you can drive with your consumers when you do something like this. Yeah, great example of immersive AI and great example of mobile as being a medium which allows the brands to do something so spectacular. This is again my favorite, the examples of hyper localization. I don't know how many of you have seen these AI deepfake examples. For example, Zomato. Have you seen this one? Yeah, can you just play the video if it plays now? No, the top left one. The audio as well. Super. That's the best way to kill a film. So this is essentially the top left one is around Hrithik Roshan, and it's a lovely one, right? So for Zomato, which is one of the largest food delivery players in the country, the core thesis is build strong relationships with the restaurants from whom it sources the product and sells to consumers. This AI platform allows Zomato to actually, in the localized version, talk about the relevant restaurant which is closest to the consumer as they talk about Zomato as a brand. How powerful is that? Yeah. The other example is the bottom one, where you see Shah Rukh talking about various retail outlets in the vicinity of the consumer. So if you sit here in your 10-kilometer periphery, whatever are the relevant retail stores for different things that you would buy actually come in on the screen when Shah Rukh talks to you. Yeah, these are great examples of AI and the technology to make the content very, very relatable. So, so the idea is not to talk about the latest. That was not the theme. I don't think we have more examples. Yeah, so I had 15 minutes to talk about. So essentially, big request to each one of you: don't assume that your logical mind will allow you to imagine the future and hence decide which are the most important aspects to work on. Your logical mind just cannot, because this is an exponential growth curve. Yeah, so use your logical mind to better understand the latest cutting edge innovations that are happening around you, and that's what you should take away from the day today. Trust me, if we meet 10 years down the line, we can look at this chart that I earlier projected. It'll look very different than what it looked like over the last 10 years. Yeah, so that's the main point I wanted to make today. Thank you so much. I'm available for any chat conversation that you want to have post this. Thank you.